Hey everybody, I'm Zac.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth.
Oh, now you know. We're brought to you by abetterrouteplanner.com. Use their link in the show notes below to get a 30-day free trial to their premium app.
And you can help support our channel by heading over to ecoware.us, where you're going to find new designs every week, and we carbon offset the production, the shipping, and the life cycle of every product, and we plant 10 trees for every order.
And we help cap a well for every order.
And we're also brought to you by BigBattery.com. No matter what you need to power, Big Battery can provide you with the latest battery tech at the best price per kilowatt hour, guaranteed. Their batteries are easily installed, require zero maintenance, and they're made right here in the US. Pick up yours today at BigBattery.com and use the code NOWYOUKNOW for 5% off at checkout. This week's episode is sponsored by Blinkist.
We just listened to the short cast of Europe's Elon Musk on Beyond Victory with Nico Rosberg.
Yeah, it was the story of not Elon, but Mate Rimac, a Croatian inventor and founder of the electric hypercar company Rimac Automobili.
Now, you might have heard us tell you about Blinks before.
You can think of a Blink as a condensed book. It's so short you can either read it or listen to it in less than 15 minutes.
But this was a shortcast, another cool service that Blinkist offers.
Yeah, you can think of a shortcast as a Blink for podcasts.
A shortcast condenses a long podcast into its key ideas.
Blinkist works with podcast creators to do this to make high-quality, fun-to-listen-to shortcasts. And let's face it, there are so many podcasts out there. How am I supposed to find the ones I'm interested in?
Shortcasts let you quickly see if you're interested in the topic.
Now, I discovered Nico Rosberg's Beyond Victory podcast, and now I'm listening to more, all because I found out about them through Blinkist.
With Blinkist, you have access to over 3,000 titles, even when you're offline.
And Blinkist also offers full-length audiobooks. Premium subscribers get special member pricing up to 65% off the regular retail price.
The first 100 people to use our link are going to get unlimited access for 1 week to try out Blinkist.
You'll also get 25% off if you want to try the full membership.
And the 7-day trial is completely free. You can cancel at any time during that period.
So today you're going to see a fascinating interview with the founder and CEO of Comma AI, which makes this little cell phone-like gizmo that you install in your car. And it does kind of what AutoPilot does in a Tesla.
Yeah, it's level 2 driving unlocked for about $1,100. Now, you might have heard of George before from his Jailbreaking the Simulation 2019 South by Southwest presentation.
Yeah, it was a lot like Elon talking about that we might be in a simulation.
Now, wasn't George hired by Tesla at one point?
Yeah, a few years ago, Elon needed to solve the autonomous driving problem because remember, they had a break from Mobileye and Elon needed some smart people. Who did he call? George Hotz.
And we're going to ask him about that.
Yeah, let's get into the interview. George Hotz is the founder and president of Comma AI, which is building vehicle automation technology based on machine learning. And thank you so much, George, for being with us today. I guess I want to start off with your slogan. Comma's slogan is making driving chill, which I think is super awesome. We are big fans of, Tesla Autopilot and stuff on the show. I'd love to know more about Comma AI. Like, what essentially is it? How does it work?
Well, so first off, to differentiate, our slogan is make driving chill. Maybe Tesla's slogan is look at this crazy feature. It's similar to Tesla Autopilot. We think of Autopilot like iOS. Apple is vertically integrated. You buy the iPhone, it comes with iOS. Tesla is vertically integrated. You buy the car, it comes with Autopilot. We're like Android. So we work across many different manufacturers, just like Android works on Samsung and LG and Motorola and Google Pixels. We work on Hondas, Toyotas, Volkswagens, Hyundais. And it's a box. Buy it. It's now $1,100. It was $1,000. Prices go up. And you put it on your windshield. You connect it to the car, which connects into the CAN buses. And then it looks at the road, decides where to drive, sends the commands, and the car drives there.
So, essentially, it's I assume you've taken like a cell phone and maybe made it to work for what you need to do. Like, is it essentially a cell phone for the hardware part?
We use cell phone pieces. So cell phones have this incredible economy of scale. If you can reuse parts of a cell phone, it's economically advantageous.
And so do you have stereoscopic cameras on it? No.
So it's kind of a myth that humans use stereo to drive. You don't need stereo cameras. So the human stereo baseline is about 5 inches. The baseline is the distance between the cameras, right? With a 5-inch baseline, you can usually only see about say 20 to 40x your baseline. Okay, so let's be generous, 40x, right? So 40 times 5 is 200. But 200 inches really isn't that far.
But it's good enough for hunting a rabbit or, is that saber-toothed tiger going to kill me? Like, that's why we evolved to have eyes like this and not eyes way out here. I mean, that makes sense. Okay, so having stereoscopic vision doesn't help when you're driving.
Yeah, the human depth perception is only used like, look, I can pick things up on this desk pretty easily. And at this range, I'm using my stereo. But at driving ranges, which are like, 10 meters is close, your stereo says nothing. You have no stereo information at 10 meters from your two eyes. Also, the human two eyes is perhaps more for redundancy than stereo.
Okay. I just had this drilled into me that we had to have stereoscopic vision. Okay.
I mean, if you wanted to have useful stereoscopic vision, would you need to have one camera on either side of the car?
Pretty much, yeah. So Subaru does it. If you look at the Subaru eyesight system, the cameras are pretty far apart, but it really isn't very useful. We can very precisely determine the distance to the car from one camera because you can make assumptions about the scene, right? You know the size of a car and you know the road plane. So you can know, we know where the car is accurate to like 5%, which is plenty with one camera.
Okay. And so your system, does it have a driver facing camera?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have a camera which faces and monitors the driver as well. I think this is one of the things AutoPilot gets wrong. I don't like their paying attention to detection. Touching the wheel, especially when the wheel disengages, is, I don't think, a good choice. So we just watch the driver. And if the driver doesn't pay attention, the system will beep and then it will disengage.
And so what kind of camera is it that's looking at the driver?
Selfie cam, my cell phone.
Oh, okay. So, because I know that some use infrared and...
Well, we do, yeah. So our new hardware, and this was the big difference between the Eon and the Comet 2, we replaced the selfie cam with a version without the infrared filter. So most cameras have an infrared filter. We got a version of the camera without it. It's the same camera, but no filter. And then we have two IR LEDs on the bottom, so we can do driver monitoring at night as well as during the day.
So it'll look dark in the cabin to the human eye, but for the computer vision, it'll see. So it's just a regular camera without the IR filter. So it would look kind of bizarre if it took a picture, but you don't care. You're just looking at the person.
Yeah, it's got a very purpley glow to it. I think we're using 850 nanometer LEDs. So, outside anything the human's going to see. But
now, you claim that you want to solve autonomous driving in measurable, valuable increments, which I thought was a really cool way to look at it. Because with Tesla, it's like everyone's going to be mad at them until they get to final full self-driving. But with you guys, you're saying, when we get to a stage that we think adds value, you can go ahead and buy it at that stage.
I mean, Tesla's doing the same thing as well, right? It's not like Tesla is, and then, I like Tesla for this. I think that it's the Waymo and Cruises of the world who are doomed. These companies who are like, we're not going to ship anything until it's perfect, or like Waymo ships. I heard a good joke about Waymo. Waymo is inverse Moore's law. 2 years ago, the operational area was 100 square miles, and now it's 50 square miles. And if it keeps continuing at this rate in 20 years, you won't even be able to fit one Waymo car in the operating area.
Well, yeah, explain that to us, because we do make fun of Waymo a lot on this show, that we think that they're doing it wrong. They're mapping, instead of, like a Tesla car or your car can kind of be dropped in pretty much anywhere and do its thing. Why is Waymo getting this wrong? Like, they're smart people. Why are they getting it wrong?
I mean, Waymo started in a very different time. During that time, it was unclear that Waymo was the wrong approach. But after you've worked on it for a few years and you realize that the long tail is never going to stop, you're never going to be able to hand engineer a solution to the driving problem. You have to use big data and machine learning. Well, okay, who at Waymo is capable of course correcting, right? Who at Waymo could say, hey, wait a second. The last 10 years, it was kind of stupid. We should really do something different. Nobody has that power.
Well, and you wouldn't want to. You wouldn't want to say, hey, big money at Google. How we've been working and I've been in charge. I've been doing it wrong the whole time. Can we do something different? And it's going to be like, well, you're gone.
Right.
Yep. And it takes an Elon Musk-like person to actually be able to do that. And, Waymo doesn't have any Elon Musk-type people.
Now, you have the second largest fleet outside of Tesla, according to you guys. And then you said likely to be the largest soon. So I guess my first question is roughly how many users do you have now?
About 5,000.
And then how can you get from 5,000 to more than Tesla's numbers soon? Is it because you don't have to build the cars?
Yeah. So, I mean, soon is always when is soon? Is it going to be this year? No. But is it going to be in the next 10 years? I think so. And because, there's a lot more Android devices in the world than iOS devices. And this is for two reasons. One, there's a lot more manufacturers of Android devices. And two, Android devices span a whole price range, right? Tesla's never going to make a $15,000 car. I mean, maybe, but it's unlikely, right? With us, you can buy a base model Corolla, $15,000, $16,000, stick the device in, it'll drive. So because we can target this low end, we can target the used market. There is a much larger potential audience for Comma than for Tesla.
What has to be in the car for you to control it? Because I mean, I remember watching the Mythbusters or whatever, and they would spend half the episode just getting the car to be a remote control car, and there'd be servo motors and all this stuff. There's none of that in your system. You don't have. So what changed in cars?
Two things. The first thing that changed was electronic power steering. So most cars made after 2016, I think actually almost all cars made after 2016, 2017 have electronic power steering, meaning that power steering used to be hydraulic. It was a hydraulic pump, which would be on the accessory belt, and it would keep pressure in the hydraulic system for steering. The problem is you have to run that pump continuously, even when you don't need power steering, and this would burn about 1 mile per gallon. So if you want to make your car 1 mile per gallon more efficient, replace the power steering motor with an electric power steering motor. And the beautiful thing about electric power steering motors is they're controlled by software. So there's a command on most cars that you can say, hey, put some torque on the steering wheel. That's how we do steering. All cars are gas by wire since we had fuel injection. So that's go back to the mid 90s. And then brakes, vehicle stability control allows the brakes to be electronically actuated. Not always well enough. Tesla actually, the original Model S couldn't run the brakes automatically, but they added this thing called the iBooster. And then the iBooster could do continuous, the brake pump was rated for continuous duty. So yeah. Brakes are electronic, steering's electronic, gas electronic.
So what's the limiting factor on getting more users then for you guys?
I'm not interested. What would I do with more users?
Well, more money. I don't know. What, you don't want more money?
Not really, no. I want to solve self-driving cars, right? I want the right number of users. Could we do anything with more data right now? Not really. We want to, I'm not saying, we want no money. We're not idiots. I want enough money to run the company profitably. And we had a fairly, not super profitable, but we made money on the whole in 2020.
But I think you're breaking the rules of capitalism here. You're supposed to say, I want all the money. Give it to me.
I want all the money too. I'm not opposed to all the money. I don't need all the money now, right? Like the short-termism that has invaded capitalism, I think is incredibly destructive to long-term value creation. I don't want $1 billion tomorrow. I want $1 trillion in 10 years.
And so you're essentially doing that. You're solving for that now because you're working on full self-driving while you're selling units to interested parties. Because it's not the easiest thing in the world. It's not like slapping on a new bumper sticker.
It's not quite a bumper sticker, but it's easy now. It's real easy. Anyone can do it pretty much. If you've ever installed a GPU in a computer, it's on par with that. It's if you're comfortable at all doing these things, it's easy to do. It takes about 5 minutes. For example, I rented a Toyota Camry when I went up to Seattle, and it took me 10 minutes to install it. Put it in the rental car, took it out. Yeah.
Quick interruption, folks. If you want to watch the full interview, click on this card or the link in the description below for the full interview on the Disruptive Investing channel.
And if you start at 10:24, you'll be starting right where we just left off. So you'll get to see the whole uninterrupted interview.
And if you like what you see so far, please hit the like button. Let's get back to the abridged version of the interview now.
Now, we were checking out some makes and models that you guys can support on your website. And we were wondering, there's a lot that you do support, but there's a lot you don't. We were wondering about the Bolt and the Volt. If you had a timeline on some of those. Is it hard because you have to actually physically have the car in-house to write the code for it?
Oh, no. So we do support the Volt. We have about 150 Volts. There's people online porting it to the Bolt. Basically, you need two requirements for the car. Your car needs to have lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control. We could relax those requirements, but because that's so common on cars today, we haven't really felt a need to. So OpenPilot just merged its 100th car. So I think we're at 105 cars we support right now. We do not own 105 cars. Most of those cars are user. OpenPilot is open source. There's a lot of very talented people out there. Hey, I want to support my car. Okay. It's a bit of pull request.
So we've talked a little bit about the hardware of the car. It's essentially bunch of smartphone components, cheap and easy to acquire, and then you hook it up into the car, and the car, if it's supported, has all the stuff that you need. So then what's the brains behind it? You just mentioned OpenPilot. What is that?
So OpenPilot is the software that runs on, it's not what really is a smartphone. It uses some smartphone components. It still does run Android, but like there's no, like, we ripped all the Android stuff out. The thing is written mostly in C++, with a bit of Python. And this is a piece of software you can download, github.com/comai/openpilot, installed on the device. And it's running, the basic components are pretty much, there's a model, which is a deep learning model that looks at the picture, says, here's where I want to drive. And then there's controls. And the controls is like, okay, here's where you want to drive. Here's how I know how to send the commands to a Toyota Corolla 2020 to actually make it go in that path.
And so it's called OpenPilot because it's open sourced. What does open source mean? I think a lot of people don't fully understand it.
So it means, it can mean different things, but so OpenPilot specifically is MIT licensed, which means the source code is available. You can go on GitHub and download it. And it's MIT licensed. So aside from, suing us, you can do pretty much anything with that code, right? Like the code has no warranty for purpose. So we don't promise you it will do anything. But hey, if you can figure out how to make it do something, that's your legal right.
And why did you want it to be open source?
Because if you're playing in an ecosystem, like Android had to be open sourced, right? Microsoft tried with Windows Phone and Windows Phone flopped because nobody's going to buy a second inferior closed source system. You have to make the second player open source. And there's no way that we'd be able to say support 100 cars if it wasn't open source. Right? The scale of the company required to do that is much, much larger. And I think there's so little downside. Like people are like, oh, but how are you going to extract value? I'm like, look, don't worry about that. Solve the problem. You have all the value you want.
All right. So here's where I kind of get stuck with Tesla's AutoPilot, right? There's level 2 where we're at now, which is, it's great. I mean, I love it. It adds a lot of features for many drivers. And in fact, that's what Jesse and I spend a lot of our time trying to tell people about is like, you should really try this because it really is awesome. For a 60-mile drive, it just completely changes everything. And that's why I think you guys call it chill. You can chill out and relax. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's level 5, right? Which is the promise of getting to, I can fall asleep in my car. But there's now going to be these middle years, right? Where we're going to go from level 2 to level 5. In these middle years, I'm going to have to wake up from my nap to take over, if the car can't handle it or, whatever level we're at. Are you excited about getting to level 5? Or does the challenge of solving each new level, is that what interests you?
I don't think the levels really mean that much. I mean, I think that with the new Tesla DMV thing, Tesla internally believes pretty much the same stuff. The only difference between the levels is who's taking liability, right? In level 2, the driver is always liable. In level 3, the manufacturer is sometimes liable. In level 4, the manufacturer is liable in a predefined area. And in level 5, the manufacturer is liable anywhere. Why do I want liability? I mean, Tesla knows this too. I'm just more honest about it, right? We're level 2 forever.
And so that means for me as a driver, so, and you're saying forever, meaning 5 years from now when you have something that can drive me from A to B, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And but that is still very much in level 2. We absolutely want to build the type in your destination, 0 disengagements. Right? We'll get there. We're 1 to 2 years behind Tesla.
So I have a question about data gathering. What kind of data are you gathering right now? What's important when you have your cars driving? Is it when the car is in comma that you value that data, or is it also when I'm just driving the car myself?
We take it all.
And so that's valuable for me driving it myself. That's valuable data to you.
In fact, we only train on you driving it yourself. When we train the models, we do not train on when comma was driving because it's a feedback loop and you don't want that.
Oh, interesting. And so do you label me as a driver? So you're like, Zach's an awful driver. Let's give him a factor of 1 because he sucks.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter? Oh, interesting.
It's an Anna Karenina quote. All good drivers are good in the same way. All bad drivers are bad in different ways. But because they're bad in different ways, it becomes noise and big data. Right, we have 5,000. I think right now, our new model that we just shipped was trained on 3,200 different drivers. The badness washes out and the goodness stays.
No, that's a good point. I mean, if you've ever been in the car with a bad driver, they are usually bad in one specific way. It's usually like, why are you hugging the left line? Why are you hugging the right line? And I guess it would just average out then. Okay, so you gather this data, you're gathering all sorts of things that I assume you have to label.
We don't label anything.
How does it work? Like, is the limiting factor that you need a whole bunch of people in a room doing stuff with that data and massaging it? Or is the deep learning really good at just figuring stuff out?
So Tesla is very much about labeling stuff. Tesla has the data engine. Kathy talks about it all the time. Big SegNet team in the Philippines. We can't afford this, so we don't do this. We automatically label the data. So we have an automatic ground truthing stack. Think about this. We have a GPS in the device, as well as a gyro, as well as an accelerometer. We can figure out exactly the path that the car went on, right? And that path's in the future. So if you can take the image and you can predict the path, well, that's all you need. And that is automatically ground truthable, no hand labeling required.
Wow. So this, I mean, I'm not that smart, but that made a lot of sense to me. Why isn't Tesla doing it that way?
Why isn't Tesla doing it that way? They're thinking about it. It's a trade-off. Like, if we had more resources, would we be doing more of the things Tesla's doing? And we use a Segnet, so that's like Tesla's like Segnet labels. We use that for some part of our automatic ground truthing stack. We have a project called Comma Pencil where we've hand labeled 10,000 images. The community has done it, but those 10,000 images are not directly used for training the models. They're used in the automatic ground truthing stack to, for example, when you're trying to figure out the exact trajectory of a car. We don't just use the GPS and the IMU. We also use the camera. But when you're trying to figure out how the car moved, well, you better filter out the other cars in the scene because they're not moving with the scene. So we use a semantic segmentation for that because it's the best way to do it. So there's some like seed hand labeling, but all the new data that comes in is automatically ground truthed and added to the model.
So how do you test new features? So I'm assuming that in one of your latest versions, I heard that you could remove the lane lines, right? So is the car following the behavior of other drivers? Is it, I'm not clear on how you test your new features.
Simulation. So the lane line removal is, you can't exactly say, here are the ground truth paths for the images because of this problem called behavioral cloning, right? If a human is hugging the left side of the lane, the most likely next thing for them to do is not recover to the center of the lane. It's actually to continue to hugging the lane because there's a lot more frames where they continue to hug the lane than the one where they happen to recover. And because of this problem, you can't just do the obvious thing. So we train it in the simulator, right? We try to figure out where would have the human driven, assuming that they made no mistakes. And that's how we did it. And we've gotten so good at this now that we actually no longer need the lanes as input to the driving policy. So for example, it's a big problem. Think about when there's an input and a merge. Someone else is coming in and it's here and then the lanes look like this, right? Okay, so the lanes look like this. Where do you position the car? It's not really the center of the lane, but it's not also hugging this lane. It's kind of like you move over a little bit, right? I don't think AutoPilot does this kind of subtlety that well. Our model didn't do it well when we were using explicit lanes. It's really hard to code. You have to learn it from data.
It's a good point. I mean, my Tesla, when there is the merge that you're talking about, as soon as one lane disappears, it goes, center of the lane, quick, let's get over. And you're like, whoa, why are we going this way? And we just tested out Ford, the Mach-E the other day. Exact same thing. It was like, hey, I'm not in the middle of the lane. I should be moving across the highway here. So it's interesting to think that wouldn't be the right, and that was just programmed in, I'm assuming. It was just you should probably be in the middle of the lane, and which sounds great until the lane becomes 2 lanes wide and the car's in the middle and everyone else is that's not how you're supposed to drive.
Tesla deals with some of this subtlety in okay ways. All the other manufacturers, are completely hopeless in dealing with it.
But does that have to be human coded for them to fix it?
That's about different strategies, not for us. No, we learn it from data. This is, with the launch of this laneless model, and you should really try it out. The 0-3, it's a toggle now. This is an edge we have over Tesla now. Tesla has a bunch of things over us. They have a bigger fleet, they have better cameras, better hardware. But I think our machine learning is a bit fancier.
Now, what is your progression with disengagement? I know that when I was hearing one of your recent interviews, you were at about a year ago, I think you were at 1 disengagement for every 100 miles, something like that. You said when you got started, it was 1 every 10 miles. Are you on some kind of exponential curve, or does it get really hard as you approach 0?
So right now, if you're driving on decently well-marked highways, it's not really going to make mistakes anymore. It's all the subtlety in the edge cases where there are mistakes. And we've kind of stopped thinking about that number and we've started realizing first we're going to need to get to end-to-end everything. So that laneless lateral is end-to-end lateral, but our longitudinal is still very hand-coded. Our longitudinal is still very based on detecting a car knowing the speed of that car and computing. Now, you can't really do this, right? We have to first move to end-to-end longitudinal, and then we're going to think about disengagement numbers and driving them down. Because, okay, let's say in lateral, let's say your car positioning is bad, right? And you can see that it's bad because the human corrects it. But that correction doesn't give you any information about how your lane lines were labeled wrong. But it does give you information about how your path was labeled wrong. And that's why you need end-to-end before you can really focus on driving down disengagements.
And so what is end-to-end?
End-to-end means that the model is driving without reference to things like lanes and cars. It's just saying, here's the path I want you to drive. And 083, we've done it now for lateral. We just have to do it for longitudinal.
So handwritten code, you'd say here's where the lane lines are. And then I'll have some system try and path the car within the lanes. And I want it to be in the middle, let's say. End to end is saying don't worry, human coder, I got this. I will figure out where the lane lines are and decide where the car goes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it uses the lane lines. Maybe it doesn't. It'll just say, here's where the car should go.
And that, assuming, is going to take into account other things entering the lanes, deer running across the road and trucks running into your lane and stuff?
It's going to take into account whatever the human took into account to decide the policy.
So what's your limiting factor for improvement? Is it, you just said it's not users. You're pretty happy with the number you have now. Is it data? Is it labeling? Is it processor speed? Is it sensors? What, or is it just time?
It's none of those things. It's bugs. When you write traditional classical software, right? Say you're writing Zoom. If there's a bug, maybe Zoom will crash, right? That's pretty easy to see. And then you can do a crash report, and you can debug that. The problem with having bugs in machine learning is you have a bug. Let's say every 1 in 10 lanes you didn't label, right? Well, it's not going to totally break your system. It's going to subtly break it. It's going to perform maybe 10% worse than it should. Right? Then it turns out you have 10 of these bugs, and each one makes it 10% worse. Every time we fix a bug, things just get better. So that's the limiting factor. Debugging, testing, validating all of our models, and making sure that we're always moving forward. Because sometimes you'll make a change, and part of it will get better, and part of it will get worse.
And so what does the future of Comma AI look like? I mean, in terms of, are you going to need to add more cameras at a certain point? I mean, how do you cross an intersection while only looking forward, right?
People always ask us about more cameras. Yes, of course we need to add more cameras. Almost none of the disengagements today are caused by a lack of cameras, right? That stupid lane placement thing, right? That doesn't have anything to do with cameras. I mean, there's so much you can fix still with one camera. And when it comes time, what, you think we're idiots? You think we can't build a device with 3 cameras? This isn't that hard. The machine learning is hard. There's hard problems here, and it's not building the thing with 3 cameras. I can go to any Foxconn, Samsung, and be yo, 3 cameras. And they're yeah, we know how to do that. It's like the iPhone, but spread them out a lot more.
So how about this age-old controversy, LiDAR versus cameras, that we've heard with Elon a million times? I mean, Elon recently tweeted that he's not even going to use radar anymore. Was he smart to do that approach? But then you raised the other question of rain, fog, darkness. What do you think?
We're moving away from radar too. We're going to be camera only. Humans drive cars with cameras only. People think of the driving problem as this rigid problem. Right, they're operating like a plow in a field, or a miner, or a Starship Docker, right? Those things are maybe appropriate to use LiDAR because they're very physics-based problems. Driving is not a physics-based problem. Driving is a psychology problem. The hard part in driving is not staying in the middle of the lane. The hard part in driving is being look at that guy, what's he gonna do? Actually, there's a flip side of that too. It's not just look at that guy, what's he gonna do? It's driving your car in such a way that the guy behind you understands what you're gonna do. It's not just important to predict, but it's also important to be predictable. And that's why the only acceptable policy for driving is the human policy. Machine-based policies are dangerous. You have to drive like a human if you want to interoperate on human roads. And then you have these utopian, googly fantasy people who's we're going to lobby the city government and replace all the roads with tiny Waymo bubble cars. I'm yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah.
So when someone finally wins this game of full self-driving, let's say it's Tesla, is it the kind of thing that other players will be able to reverse engineer and come up with a couple of years later? Or is it the kind of thing where once someone wins it, it's really hard to figure out?
Part of the beauty of us being open source is luck. Again, maybe I don't play capitalism right, but I like making money, but I also like the idea of just obliterating billions of dollars of value. All these people who think they're going to solve self-driving cars and then rent seek, losers. I'm going to solve it and give it away for free. And then there'll be no access to compete with us. So you ask, like, is it something someone can reverse engineer and figure out? They don't even have to. They can just download AutoPilot. It's free.
Now, there's this legendary story about you helping Tesla to work on their self-driving back around, I think it was 2015, when Tesla was trying to get away from Mobileye's system and develop their own system. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Basically Tesla's looking to hire people to join the AutoPilot vision team. There was a contract dispute. I ended up starting Comma. There's not much more to it than that.
But let me ask you, is that what started to get you interested in this problem? And why is this problem so interesting to you?
I mean, it's probably the coolest applied AI problem today. Also, like, truck drivers, most common job in America. Maybe I like to build things that are like, you can describe it to a kindergartner, but the underlying technology is like mad complex. Like, yo, check it out. You put the box in the car, you lean back, and it drives.
And that's just interesting enough for you to be working on? I mean, you're a smart guy. You could be doing anything else.
I think solving this problem is one of the big ones that's going to lead to progress in AI. Like, it's not like Go. You can solve Go. Go's a cool problem. And like, I would like to work on like things like that as well. But the problem with Go is, well, it doesn't interact with the real world. Go has a very clear model. It's a model of Go. It's a simple model, right? The model of the real world is so much more complex. So it's kind of like, a level above solving these video games.
What's your view on traditional big auto companies? Will they be able to keep up with Tesla? Do you think many of them will fail? Will they be able to use your system and so thereby keep up with Tesla?
I think what's going to happen here is the exact same thing that happened in the phone industry. You're going to have like the players like Nokia, who historically had like dominated part of the space, and they're going to fall off hard. Maybe that's a Ford, maybe that's a Toyota, maybe that's a BMW, right? Like these like big names, like where, kind of arrogant, right? And I think that there's going to be room for, companies like Hyundai, who are more agile, who've had more of an upstart. The first companies to embrace AutoPilot have a huge head start, right? I don't pitch the automakers. I'm not talking to these people. If the automakers want to talk to me, I charge $1,000 for a phone call. Like, because, it's their loss. I am that confident in this, that the automakers who choose to embrace, doesn't necessarily have to be AutoPilot, but the automakers who choose to embrace a more like modern approach to software are going to succeed. The car is a consumer electronics device.
I want to talk about this point in history. When I was a kid in the late 70s and 80s, I remember getting our first home computer, a TRS-80, and I was like, this is amazing. And I remember the first sound card I got in a computer, I'm like, this is amazing. But in between, there was long periods of like, this isn't so amazing. Now, I feel like with Neuralink and SpaceX and Starlink and all these things, I'm like, every day seems amazing. Does it feel that way to you, that we're just in this amazing period, or is it always just going to feel this way going forward?
I find it interesting that the three things you described are Elon Musk companies. And I think that's a problem. That's a minority. The majority of the money is going into Wall Street and ads. Right? Like, until these things like die, we could be doing so much more. The fact that it's like very few people doing anything is kind of concerning from how the future is going to play out perspective. But it's very exciting. Things are getting good.
Now, when you say that people aren't doing anything, I mean, there's people who are getting up early in the morning, they're going to work, and then they come home. But you're saying that basically they're not changing the world.
Not only are they not changing the world, right? Like, there's a lot of people out there who you go to like a coffee shop and you you make lattes for people, right? Like, you're not changing the world, but you're doing something, right? Like, you're not, it's not like something, but it's something. It's not like, I'm talking about the like executives of Google and Facebook, right? Like, these people, they could do something else. They have a choice. They have so much capacity, but what do they go and do? They sell ads, right? The people who oh man, I used to like brilliant kids in my high school, math and physics. What are they doing? Well, I joined a hedge fund. They pay me $400,000 a year. Like, you're a loser being paid in fake money. The money's fake. People are like, George, what conspiracy theories do you believe in? I'm like, I believe that in 1971, they made the dollar backed by nothing. And you all run around and compete for these fake dollars. They're like US points, Fed coin. Oh yeah, hedge funds and ads. Yeah. Well, okay, we got to get out of the hedge funds and ads way of thinking about things.
When did you know that you were on the path to be an entrepreneur? Was it since you were a kid? Did it come about like after leaving college? Like when did that become obvious to you?
I'm not an entrepreneur. I just wanted to, I saw Elon as a worthy adversary. I wanted to beat him. Still do. That's what we're doing. It's like a little we're self-driving cars, right? I'm excited about the laneless stuff. I think this actually might. I don't know. I'd really like to beat Tesla. I think Tesla's ahead of us, and I think they're probably going to win. But at least I'm so happy that they're out there. It's worthy competition, right? Like, what fun is it if it's just like me stomping all over like Toyota?
So you said that Elon was a worthy adversary. Why do you need an adversary, and why is Elon like your adversarial pick?
It's not like a real adversary, but you need in some ways you need someone who's going to be able to appreciate what you've done, right? That's I think what moves the world kind of forward.
So you're like the Sherlock Holmes to the was it the Minecraft? No, that's his brother. Moriarty. Yeah.
Moriarty. Yeah. I'm the Moriarty. Elon could be the Sherlock. I'm the Moriarty. Right? All right.
That's awesome. That's really a great place to end. I mean, it's so great to hear that he kind of inspired you. He inspired us. I mean, what we're doing every day is because of him. And it sounds like what you're doing is because of him. And it's really great to see that you're actually making the world a safer, better place, more enjoyable place.
I'm here to solve cool problems, just for intellectual glee.
So you can see much more in the full interview with George on the Disruptive Investing channel. We had to cut a bunch of stuff for time, but George is an intelligent and very interesting guy, so I don't think you want to miss that.
Now, I don't personally agree with everything that he says, but I do admire his gumption and the fact that he's bringing, some version of full self-driving to the masses.
Now, what do you think? Do you think George is going to have a bigger fleet than Tesla soon, like he said? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And I want to thank you, our viewers, because it's because of you that we were able to snag this interview with George. So don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And if you really want to support this channel and the work that Zac and I do, please consider joining us on Patreon. We've got a ton of cool perks. In fact, our Now You Know Investor Club got to see this whole interview early.
Yeah, so thanks so much for joining us every week. We'll see you next week. Now you know.